At its very core, drug science must remain independent. This means we don't accept sponsorships. It's with the support of the drug science community we're able to do this and make the podcast in the first place. If you're able to become a drug science community member and support the show, you too will be supporting the dissemination of evidence-based drug policies. Without you, none of this would be possible. For anybody interested, there's a link in the show notes. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Drug Science Podcast with me, David Nutt. Here we're bringing together experts and activists for a rational, honest and informed conversation about drugs. Well, welcome to another edition of the Drug Science Podcast. This is one that we haven't talked about before, although drug science has been quite involved in some of the sort of policy thinking behind Chemsex, but we've never had a podcast on Chemsex. And the reason we're able to do it today is because we have Darren Murphy with us. And Darren is, I suppose, he would consider himself both a victim and a survivor. And now he's an educator. So welcome, Darren. Great to have you on the programme.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be on. And like I said earlier, massive privilege to be asked. So thank you. And thank you for bringing some awareness to Chemsex because, unfortunately, outside of London, there's kind of very little or no support. And there's not really a lot of knowledge about it either in like the general public, and with some certain organisations that may be not drug and alcohol based. So thank you very much for asking me and for spreading this awareness because it means a lot to me, both on a personal and professional level as well.
Well, we'll get on to the professional a bit later because that's obviously where you are now and where you have what you've evolved to. But do you want to start with the personal? Explain to people when we talk about Chemsex, what does it mean? Because a lot of people really won't. They'll have misconceptions and misunderstandings. Why don't you tell us your story and tell us how you and Chemsex kind of worked?
So if I give in a nutshell like a brief kind of summary of Chemsex. So basically Chemsex is men who self-identify as gay, bi or trans, or also men who sleep with men but still identify as heterosexual, that have sex with other men and the particular substances they use to enhance their sexual experience. And the three main key players in Chemsex with substances is crystal meth, methamphetamine, methadone, GHB and GBL. And I have heard it being called the unholy trinity. And I quite like that. So I kind of use that myself now.
They are very different drugs. I mean,
yes.
Crystal meth's very much up and GHB is very much down and methadrone's kind of a bit up. So tell us more about why people use different drugs like that.
So this is the interesting thing about them, Dave, is the fact that they're all from different families of drugs, but they all produce very similar effects, especially when it comes to your sex drive, your libido, methamphetamine, methadone, and GHB, GBL, especially with GBL, because it's a depressant taken in the right amount, produces like a stimulant kind of effect. And they all increase your sex drive and lower your sexual inhibitions. That's why they work so well within the Chemsex context.
And are they used individually or do people make cocktails?
There's polydrug use, usually a lot of cocktail. Yeah, there's a lot of polydrug use within. And they are just the three key main players. There's obviously different substances that are also used there, i.e. alkyl nitrate poppers, a lot of Viagra use, sometimes cocaine, MDMA, and surprisingly, sometimes ketamine as well.
So tell us a little bit more about, is this something used when you're having sex or is it something used to get you the courage to meet other men who have sex with men? Or tell us a bit more about the nature of the drug?
Yeah, so it's used in both contexts. So when I was involved in Chemsex, I was involved in Chemsex for about 7-8 years. It would usually be initially me taking the drug, whether that be methadone, methamphetamine, GHB, GBL, or all of them together. and then starting to feel the effects in my libido and the lowering of my inhibitions, which then would prompt me to go on to Grindr to find a chemsex party.
I see. Okay.
And then over the continuation of the party, for me, it was continuous use. And with others that I saw at the party, it was just continuing use for, it could be for days.
Well, obviously, with the crystal meth and the methadone, you weren't going to sleep. I guess you were overriding the effects of the GHB then, weren't you?
Yes.
Really important point you made. I mean, obviously, I've been involved on the other side of this, helping people come off GHB dependency, and which is actually not an easy thing to do. It's actually quite a challenging and difficult dependency. And also, of course, there are quite a number of cases of people who've died of respiratory depression from GHB, GBL. So how did you actually try to get the dosing right?
Well, in London, it was always GBL, which is the precursor to GHB. So once you take the GBL, your body kind of transforms it into GHB. So a standard dose for GBL would be anything from 0.5 mils to 1.5, depending. Now, for me, it was usually between a 1.2 mil or a 1.5 mil. For me, G was kind of the least taken for myself out of the three. I kind of gradually over time kind of whittled it out. I got given an ultimatum by a really good friend of mine in London back at the end of 2013. And she said to me, I can't be your friend anymore, Darren. I love you too much to see the state that you're in with G. She was like, and it wasn't like it's either me or the G, but she said to me, so I have to pull away from this friendship because I can't see the states of you walking around the street late at night and how you are and attending these parties. And at that point, I made a promise to her and I said, I will never touch it again. And from that day, I never did. So for me, I felt I was quite lucky, Dave.
Well, you were, yeah. Could have gone into seizures, delirium, and withdrawal.
Yes.
You were just using it episodically, I suppose. You weren't using it every day. You were just using it around the party. Yeah.
Yes, I was just using it around the party. And then what I did notice is I think I'd been using it quite frequently in a period of a week. And I remember one thing that I remember about GBL is that I never really experienced a come down from it. Once I'd I'd come down off the G, I didn't actually experience any feeling low mood or, low in myself. And I remember it was just before I'd kind of give it up, that I'd made that promise to my friend, that I started noticing that when I stopped taking it, I was starting to suffer hot flushes and starting to feel a little bit shaky. So I don't know for certain, Dave, but I believe that was me becoming physically dependent or having early signs of physical dependency to it.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like it. So, yeah, well, congrats to your friend for
I know.
Giving you the ultimatum, and congrats on managing to stop. Yes, but
thank you.
Which after 9 years or so was quite. You've had quite a lot of that, so you were lucky not to be more dependent. Yeah.
Yeah, I was, and I had two very good friends in London. One was a female, and she'd only been taking it for a month, and she became physically dependent after taking it for a month. And there was another friend of mine that he'd been taking it over a prolonged period of time. And I remember him saying to me, because at this point he'd been physically dependent for quite a while, and with G, he was having to take it every 1.5 to 2 hours. So he was having to carry it around with him. And he said that he'd forgot his bottle of G and he'd gone to get on the bus to go home. But unfortunately, it had come to that 2-hour period. And he said he was unable to get into his pocket to get his Oyster card because the tremors had become that bad.
Yes, I've treated people who've actually been using G to help them sleep, which is, if you take enough, you'll sleep, but then you'll wake up after a couple of hours and then you'll need to take some more. And it can become a dependence producing really rather fast. And you might not know this, Darren, but it's such a powerful sleep promoting agent. We actually did a study which was quite challenging in people with chronic fatigue syndrome who often have very unrefreshing sleep. And we're interested to see if we could really promote fantastic sleep, which when you take G, you get the deepest sleep you can get. If you measure the brain waves, people go into extremely deep sleep. But in that particular study, which was done in a laboratory, so we had someone there overnight watching them, sometimes they did struggle to breathe. So that's why it's actually a very difficult. I mean, it is still a medicine for narcolepsy, but it's definitely not something you should, play with or take. It is potentially a respiratory suppressing drug, which can be very problematic. So well, I'm glad you're off that, and you're off the crystal and the methadone as well.
I am, yes. 6 years in November. I'll be abstinent. Yeah.
And can I just talk a little bit more about this what you talked about the using them to begin to get the confidence to get onto Tinder and to start finding where the parties were happening. I presume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that part of the impact of methadone and crystal would be to get you up and let's go, let's really go. And then the G would be, let's take the edge off the anxiety. Would that be right?
You've kind of really hit the nail on the head, Dave. There was a lot of individuals that I used to attend within chemsex parties, and what you would find is they were kind of taking the G to take the edge off the crystal, which the street name is Tina. So if I do refer and slip up and say Tina, I am referring to crystal meth. And I used to notice, and I'd have conversations as well with individuals while I was at the party. Sometimes people would feel that the high of crystal meth was just a little bit too much. So what happened is they used the G to kind of help level them out a little bit from it.
Yeah, and of course, I suppose it's better than using heroin, which is what other people who use stimulants, who are very addicted to stimulants, often use opiates in particular, to take the edge off. So at least, which is obviously even more dangerous than G. Yeah. And one of the other things it came to I remember there being a lot of concern in the early days of methadone where people were actually injecting methadone. I mean, I presume were you doing that, or was that common, or was it?
I was, yes. I was injecting methadone, but I started to inject methadone towards the end of my time being in active addiction with it, because around about I was dealing at this point, David.
Mm-hmm.
I was dealing quite a lot at this point to try to subsidize my addiction, and I guess we'll cover that a little bit later on with what happened. But around about 2015, my supplier, who was giving me the methadone to sell, said to me, just to let you know that methadone is going to stop getting produced. How you know it now, it's going to stop. So either be prepared for it or stockpile the stuff you have. And it was around about the time just before methadone stopped coming out as 4-MMC. There was kind of different kind of chemical compounds or molecular structures put together. It was, and I started injecting it just before it stopped. But then what we found, and it come from an ex of mine, that if we mixed crystal meth with methadone, the original methadone, what happened is crystal meth would kind of piggyback the effect of the methadone. So it kind of kept it a little bit higher, because with an injection of methadone, the hit was intense, but it didn't last very long. But if you mixed it then with crystal meth, it kind of prolonged it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, that's quite sophisticated pharmacology. And of course, the mechanisms of the two are slightly different. One, methadone is more of a releaser, and crystal meth is more of an uptake blocker. So actually, it makes perfect sense at the level of the synapse in the nerve. And you guys, we always say that people who use drugs are way more knowledgeable about drugs than even psychopharmacologists like me. And you clearly were, yes.
You get in active addiction, you get very creative.
Well, of course, it's something were you using it daily then when you were addicted?
Every single day. I was injecting crystal meth every day for about 3.5 years, give or take. Wow. 4 weeks in between that. And they were weeks that I'd gone away with family on holiday. But give or take about a month, I was injecting crystal meth every single day.
And you managed to hide your habit from the family for 4 years.
Well, I was very lucky to hide my habit from the family because I was living in London for 18 years. And I'm from Leeds originally, and this is where I'm back now, back in Leeds. So it was kind of a lot easier to hide my addiction from my family. However, when I was going back to Leeds, family members were like, "You're looking extremely thin, you're really drawn in." But because I'd been a professional dancer, I was always blaming it on, I'm just working too hard and not being able to eat enough.
Yes. Yeah, you're in the right profession then to stay thin.
Yeah, I was at the time.
I mean,
yeah.
there is, just as a bit of an aside, but you're obviously close to the reality, much closer than me. I mean, the need to stay thin as a dancer is that, we know in ballet dancers that often pushes people towards sort of anorexia. Is that the same in male dancers?
Yeah, I mean, I started training as a dancer in 95, I think it was. And this kind of ties in with addictive behaviors. I took my first ever drug when I was about 13, 14. And I'd kind of been on ecstasy at 14 years of age. And I stopped taking ecstasy at 14 years of age due to having to go to hospital for serious mental health complications.
Oh.
But when I started dancing, what I did is I put every bit of energy and every bit of focus into my dancing that I ended up acquiring an eating disorder while I was in college because of that need to have that dancer body, have that six pack, that really lean figure with a very low body fat with more muscle. Yeah.
So you think you were, in a way, kind of predisposed towards an addiction vulnerability? You got addicted to sort of not eating and dancing, and then Tina came along and you got addicted to her.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of, if I can take you back, if that's okay, and give you a bit of a timeline. So I always knew I was gay from a very young age, but I tried to hide that. And I was in a relationship with an extremely lovely woman for 5 years. And at the end of those 5 years, I had to come out as being gay because I couldn't hide my sexuality any longer. But the upset from that, from a breaking up of a 5-year relationship, led me back into starting to use ecstasy and speed as a way to escape and forget about the trauma that I'd caused my ex-partner from, breaking up and coming out as being gay. And that it just progressed from there. So I moved to London, and when I moved to London, my partying just kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was always kind of known in the dance community. If I was in contracts doing shows, I was always kind of known as the party boy. And at that time, because of a low self-confidence, I used to wear that party boy label like a badge of honor.
Yeah. Especially coming from up north, you were the new Billy Elliot, were you?
Some people did say. Yeah, and it was, very similar to Billy Elliot growing up on a council estate, not having much money, family of 6, and I was the youngest, and kind of the only member of my family that actually, got out of Leeds and, moved to a different city. And kind of what happened is, over the period of being in London, I still wasn't fully out to everybody in Leeds. So being in London was like a new lease of life for me. So I felt like I could fully explore. And what I thought at the time was accepting my sexuality. What I've come to realize now is I wasn't fully accepting it. I was still had a lot of internalized homophobia towards myself. And what 2009 was kind of a really significant year, Dave, was because 2009 was the year my father was found dead in his flat, and the year I was introduced to methadone.
Yes, so that was the peak of use, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of what I didn't realize at the time is it was going to be quite a significant turning point for me and my addiction, I don't want to say addiction at that point, but me and my substance use, because what happened is when I first ever experienced methadone, I didn't experience it in a chemsex context. I experienced it with going out, partying, dancing till all hours. And I remember I was laid in bed and I had a really fleeting thought that I never thought about again until I was heavily addicted to it. And this fleeting thought went through my mind and it was like, you could get addicted to this. But it was so quick, Dave, that I didn't even think twice about it. If you fast forward to mid 2012 from 2009, I was taking methadone every single day. I was attending chemsex parties weekly at that point. And I was just starting to get into dealing around about 2012, 2013. And the reason for me getting into dealing, I'm not a very flashy person, Dave. I don't drive cars. I don't like watches. It wasn't to get flashy things. It was a simple matter of survival for me, because I have a fear of my rent not being paid, my bills not being paid, not having any money just to be able to live, not like live extravagantly, but just live. So as time was going on, I'd taken a year out of dancing in 2013 to work in a hair salon, because I didn't want the instability of the payments from dancing, the instability.
Very stressful profession, isn't it? Because first, you've got to keep proving to people that, you've got to go through auditions all the time. It must be horribly stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I was so terrible with money. So I could earn a good amount of money a week, and I could spend that in a week, or I could earn mid to low amount of money a week and spend it a week. So anything I earned a week, I could easily spend it. So it didn't matter how much or how little, I could always spend it. So, and when I was working in this hair salon, which I got fired from eventually, because I was turning up to work high every single day, and it was, at the time, it was a good friend of mine who owned the salon, and I wasn't being paid enough monthly to be able to survive financially in London, even if I didn't have the addiction. After my bills were being paid, I was left with about £400 to last me a month in London. And that was before my travel, before my food, before my drugs. So what happened is, I had an ex at the time, and he was a dealer. And I said to him, you know what? Your drugs are really good, but you are the worst dealer I've ever come across. I was like, you're rude to your customers. I was like, you're never on time. I was like, why are you doing this? And then at that time, I had what seemed to be the most logical idea at the time, but I was high, so any idea would have been quite logical. At that point, I needed to make money to be able to survive in London. So I said to him, why don't I work for you? Why don't I do your drops? Why don't I deal with your customers? Because I felt like I had really good customer service.
You're definitely more a person, yes.
So I said, why don't I do this in my spare time and you can pay me some money? And he agreed to this. And what happened then is, his supplier, who I was like, I don't want any part of, I'm not a part of this. I'm just helping out. He'd kind of seen that I'd been making my ex a lot more money than what he was making. So he sat us both down in a room and he said, if you mess this up, Darren takes over. And I was like, whoa, leave me out of this. I don't want any part of it. I'm not doing it for that. And he was like, you take over. And what happened is, the more drugs I was taking, the more I was using, the more then I was selling to try to get more money. And it gradually ended up in me losing my dance jobs, getting fired from the West End. I'd been in the West End. I'd done a show, The Snowman, and I did it once a year, every year in the West End for 15 years. And on the final year, which was 2014 to 2015, I was turning up to go on stage 5 days, no sleep. I was, I was snorting methadone in the shower room before I went on stage. I was taking ecstasy to go on stage to try to calm me down from the methadone. I thought I was hiding it. Everybody else could see exactly what was going on. And I guess it's that delusion of addiction, isn't it? And I remember the company manager pulling me in and saying to me, basically in a roundabout way, they didn't say it outright, we basically know what you're doing. If you carry on doing this, we will have to fire you. And I was like, no. I was like, no, it's not that. I've just been given a HIV diagnosis, which I had. That wasn't a lie. I was like, I'm just having trouble dealing with it. I was having trouble dealing with it, but it wasn't, I was just trying to deal with the HIV status as an excuse to my behavior.
Yeah. So you got sacked, and then what?
So then what happened is, it wasn't an official sacking, but what happened is you finish the show in January, and then in the May, you will get your contract for the November, December. That contract just never came. So, and that was just, and I was, I think, the longest standing member within that company at the time. And, I don't blame them. I was an absolute wreck. And then I had a job lined up in the January of 2015 to go to Canada. I ended up getting fired from that because I turned up to my first day of rehearsal in an absolute state. I'd ended up calling the dance captain a few unsavory names within the rehearsal, and then slept in and missed the next rehearsal. And they knew as well, they kind of knew, and they just let me go. And it was at that point I was kind of like, okay, I kind of got a bit, how do I say this, a bit sure of myself, I guess. And I guess I turned around and I just went, you know what? I've spent a lot of time, money, and energy on my addiction, so I'm going to enjoy it for a bit. Because I was, in that point, I was so engulfed in the addiction that I was like, I never want to give this up. So I thought to myself, how am I going to support myself? Do I take up dealing full time? Is that something I take up? Or would being an escort, a male escort to other men, those were the two options I gave myself. And I thought to myself, I'd be a really bad escort, David. Like, I'd be very good at talking, but anything else, yeah, I am, yeah. So anything else, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do. So dealing was it was the most logical way forward.
And how long did that last before you got caught?
I first got raided. I have these dates etched in my mind.
You're very good at dates, I must say. Yeah, definitely better than me.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing. I'm not too sure. But on the 17th of April 2017 is when I got raided by the police. And I'd always gone under the police radar, and I kind of got caught by an unfortunate chain of events. They actually wasn't looking for me. I'd actually, in a nutshell, missed an appointment with a dentist, gone to my friend's house in Southwest London, because most of my customers were in Southwest London, gone to my friend's house, had some drugs in my bag, had £500 that I was supposed to pay the dentist, my passport, because I was going to get a hotel in Southwest London because I lived in Southeast, and I was going to sell from the hotel that night. I got a phone call asking if I could deliver some crystal meth to a hotel in Vauxhall. I said to my friend, can I leave my bag here? I don't want to really carry it around with all this money in my bag late at night. He said, that's absolutely fine. I went to the hotel, ended up falling asleep at that hotel. And when I woke up, I had about 16 missed calls on my phone. And it turned out that my friend's house had got raided. They weren't looking for me. It was because of suspicious behavior. There was a few people there that were creating suspicious behavior and they weren't dealing. But at the time, it was a house full of people that were addicted to G or crystal. And suspicious behavior had been reported, comings and going late at night. I was one of them probably. And I think there may have been an escort at the time working from that property. And they raided that house and they found my bag with my passport in it.
Oh, that's a bit of a giveaway, the passport.
Yeah, half a litre of GBL, £500 in cash, and maybe a quarter of a gram of crystal meth that was found in my bag. So then the police took a picture of my passport. I called Brixton Police Station, asked if I was wanted by the police. They said that they wasn't able to disclose that information. They left it about 2 months, and then I thought, you know what, everything's okay now. It'll have blown over. Put the drugs back in my house, put the money back in my house that I'd been saving because I was kind of just hoarding money. I was never really spending it. And then on the 17th of April, 2017, the police came, but they came at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, whereas usually it's maybe between 3 to 5 a.m. And I thought it was Amazon. I opened the door and there we were.
So you got done for dealing, did you?
Possession with intent to supply, proceeds of crime, and there was another one that I didn't even realise I was charged for, Dave, and it was trying to obstruct the course of justice. I don't know how, but it was never really explained, but it's on my DBS.
So where did you go down?
So initially I got sent to Thameside, which is in southeast London near Woolwich. So that was a remand prison. And then from the remand prison, on the 2nd of January 2019, I got sent to Brixton Prison to serve the remainder of my sentence. At the time, I'd heard about Brixton in Thameside Prison. I'd heard it was quite a naughty jail to go to. And what they're kind of quite clever at doing in Thameside Prison is they will not tell you that you're moving prisons, because Brixton is one of the prisons that if anybody arrives bent over with handcuffs on, Brixton won't take them. So, and they call it in prison, they call it bent up or bent over. So what the guards do or the officers do is they give you the least amount of time to tell you. So there's very little time you are able to be able to barricade your cell, kick off.
Yeah. So you went to Brixton, which isn't, I guess it's got a rather bad reputation, hasn't it? How long were you there?
I was there for 10 months, but I was very lucky because I spent that 10 months in rehab, because Brixton has a health and wellbeing wing which does a rehab there.
So you're a prison success.
I guess so, yeah. I guess I am, yeah.
Is that when you stopped?
It was. When I went to court on the 1st of November, I was so kind of deluded and I guess cocky as well, David. And I think crystal meth, it kind of will do that to you, I guess.
A lot of confidence.
Yeah, a lot of confidence. I was never really nasty, but I could be quite cocksure at times. I mean, which is a complete opposite to what I am anyway.
Is that when you actually stopped? You're one of the people who actually you stopped using in prison. I guess probably. I guess it was quite hard to get crystal in prison, isn't it?
Yeah, really hard. So what kind of happened is when I went to court, I'd been up all night at a chemsex party. I'd been injecting crystal. I left the party, came home, showered, got myself into a nice pair of trousers, nice coat. All my hair was done. I felt like I was looking quite presentable, and I thought to myself, "There's no way I can't be sent down." And I don't know if it was a mixture of delusion but disbelief as well, because I was like, how am I in this situation? A person that has never been in trouble with the police. So I think it was a mixture of delusion and disbelief. And I went just thinking, you know what, I'm going to be home by afternoon. And I remember I was in a London Crown Court at Elephant and Castle, and in the dock where you are, the glass is so thick, Dave, that I couldn't really hear what the judge was saying. And the judge had gone out to think about what sentence she was going to give me or what the outcome was going to be. And my sister had come down to support me. And when the judge came back in, we all stood up, as you do. And I heard her say something, but I couldn't hear what she'd actually said. And I heard my sister scream and collapse in the chair. And I looked at the guard that was in the dock with me, and I was like, what did she just say? And he went, you've just been given 32 months. And it was, I think to this day, it was one of the worst shocks, I've ever, had to kind of try to process.
So you went straight down then?
Went straight down into, yeah. I didn't know, I didn't really know anything about prison, about jail. I didn't know anything really about plugging things or anything like that. It was something that had never even crossed my mind because I guess with the disbelief.
Yeah. I think denial, yeah, quite. Yes. I mean, a heavy drug habit kind of, if you don't deny the problems, it's very difficult to sustain it, isn't it? Well, we shouldn't laugh. But anyway, the good thing is...
No, it's good to laugh, I think.
But you changed. So tell people about what you've done since, which is really quite impressive.
Oh, thank you. So when I got out, I had to move back to Leeds. It was kind of one of my license conditions. So I moved in with my sister who came down to support me. I still rent a room from my sister to this day. And so for the first 5 to 6 months, I was on tag. So I was just very limited in what I could do. I was on universal credit. I was doing a dance class here and there where my tag would let me. And then 2 weeks...
Teaching dance at this point?
No, just at this point, just participating in dance classes. And then I had my tag removed. 2 weeks after the tag was removed, we hit lockdown.
Ah.
So then... But by this point, by the time we'd hit lockdown, I had just got a job teaching for a dance organisation in Leeds called Dance Action Zone Leeds. DAZZLE is the acronym for it. So I'd been accepted as a teacher on the Thursday, and then we got locked down on I think it was a few days. It was a few days after that we got officially locked down. And so I spent all lockdown doing either teaching online for DAZZLE organisation or delivering food parcels to individuals that were unable to eat for DAZZLE as well. They were doing it as a charity, trying to get food parcels out. And it was during this time, I used to have, and it was a part of my using, David, a really, really low self-esteem. So I wasn't good enough. I wasn't a good enough dancer. I wasn't a good enough person. Growing up, I'd been told by my mum's partner from the age of about 4 to 12, you're worthless, you're nothing, I'm the man of the house, you're weak, I control things. So I kind of carried that with me. So when it come to me trying to reach out and trying to get into the line of work that I'm in now, I procrastinated on it for so long. And then one day I just got really brave. I put in an application to work with an organisation in Leeds called Barker, which it was targeted family support. So it was working with children whose parents were suffering with addiction. And I filled out the application. I was like, I have got no actual experience, but I do have lived experience with addiction. Like I said, I was feeling really brave that day. But they came back to me and they said, you haven't made it through to the interview stage, but we would love you to come and volunteer for us. So I started volunteering then as lockdown was starting to lift. And what I found is I really enjoyed working with the kids, but I found myself being more drawn to the adults, right? And speaking to the parents and being like, do you want to talk anything through? Are you struggling? Is there anything I can do to help? Which then the great thing about volunteering is it gives you that flexibility to see what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, no, quite.
And so then I made a decision and I was like, right, I knew that there was a volunteer position going up for a sustained recovery hub that I was attending as a service user. And I just asked, would I be able to apply for this? So I applied for the volunteer position at the sustained recovery to teach dance to everybody that was in recovery from addiction. I did that for about 6 weeks. And then a trainee position came up for a recovery coordinator, a substance use recovery coordinator. I was encouraged by the managers at the Five Ways, which is a sustained recovery hub, to go for the trainee role. I went for the trainee role. And then 7 months within my trainee role, I was kind of aware that it was coming to an end because it was only a 12-month contract. And a position came available for a focused intervention team worker, which is working with clients that have substance misuse issues, anything from, it was all alcohol and non-opiate, which are the drugs that I was quite heavily involved with. So an official position came up. I got that official position when I interviewed for it. And then when I was in the official position, I kind of was like, there's a gap in this service. And I was like, and it's Chemsex support. I was like, and it's not only in this service, because I work for a service called Forward Leeds. It's under Humankind Charity. And I was like, it's not only in this service, it's in services all around the UK outside of London. And when I started talking to certain professionals, not professionals necessarily within drug and alcohol services, but other professionals that were referring individuals over to our service and discussing crystal meth, a kind of running theme was crystal meth is not even in the UK, is it? And I was like, it is massive within the UK. And this is where the gap was. And this is where I was like, I want to see if I can try to bridge that gap, because I know that when I come back to Leeds, I didn't have any Chemsex support. I just went to Narcotics Anonymous for that support, but it wasn't focused Chemsex support. So I didn't feel in the meetings that it would be appropriate for me to talk about Chemsex. I didn't feel it was the right environment. It didn't hinder me. I don't feel it hindered me within my addiction.
But it may have been a missed opportunity, or it may have slowed things down a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, are you running Chemsex groups now then? But it's enough of an issue in Leeds for you to have to be running your own treatment groups?
Yes, it really is. So I know from first-hand experience, from lived experience, that when I come off the Chemsex scene in 2018, it was still quite rife then. What I found out, now I'm working in the position I'm working in, from clients that I've been supporting, that during lockdown is when there was kind of an explosion even more with it.
Oh, really?
Within lockdown, yeah. And kind of, I think that because everybody was isolating, people were isolated on their own, I think their outlet was to either organise a Chemsex party or attend one.
It's interesting because we find that with other drugs as well. Lockdown tended to polarize people. People who were drinking too much tended to drink a lot more because that was the way they dealt with their time, their spare time, and their stress. So there was an expansion in. I hadn't heard about that, so that's interesting. And I mean, how busy are you now? I mean, is this a hub for problems in Leeds?
So it's still a very hidden, especially within Leeds, it's still a very hidden subculture. And the way I kind of look at it, the way I kind of see it is, if you're in the LGBT community, you're a minority or the majority. If you take substances as an LGBT person, you're the minority of the minority. But if you're involved in Chemsex, you're the minority of the minority of the minority.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to infiltrate it as a professional, without, I was like, one of the difficulties that I found is trying to get to the cohort of people without being involved in it,
Yeah.
So what we've done is I work together with an amazing organisation within Leeds, MESMAC, which is an LGBT organisation, and they do sexual health. They allow me to do a drop-in clinic every fortnight. So that is just really informal. They're not coming into structured treatment. They can just come in. They can come once or they can come 15 times. It's up to them. It's just a safe space in an LGBT organisation where they can come and just talk some stuff through. And I can offer, harm reduction advice if needed, but harm reduction advice could be the active listening as well. And that's how it kind of started. I then worked with the marketing manager of Forward Leeds, and we put together a Chemsex QR code poster, which that if you scan it, it'll take you straight to the Chemsex page within Forward Leeds. It provides a lot of harm reduction around safer using hepatitis C, HIV, chill outs, Chemsex parties that are known as chill outs. And there is a referral form on there as well that if they want to refer themselves in, that they can use that and refer themselves in.
And that covers the whole of Yorkshire or just Leeds? Or
It's for the whole of Leeds, because Forward Leeds, we work on LS postcodes, I think with 2 postcodes just in Wakefield, but that's for structured treatment. But from the clinic, I've had individuals come and visit me from Hull and York as well. So with the clinic...
So you're quite a pioneer then. I mean, are there other towns apart from London that have similar facilities, resources?
At that point, that I'd seen of, not that I'd known of at that point. I know that Brighton probably does, Manchester as well. Manchester does. Brighton and London, the 3 kind of key players. I know Manchester is very active within Chemsex support, but I knew that it was what was really lacking in Leeds. Like because I know from when I came up and I was looking for that support, there was just nothing there. And I think one of the worst things that could happen is a person coming into structured treatment for support, but having to tell their worker about the substances they're using and the behaviours they're engaging in, and training the worker.
You quite know. I mean, that's where your experience is completely, very, very, very valuable. Can I ask you about a couple of other things? Because I think people will be interested. So the terms of your license, which you had to leave London, I mean, was that something you kind of celebrated, or did you resist it? Or in hindsight, it seems like it was exactly the right decision, but I would be interested in your take on it.
Yeah, do you know what? In all honesty, Dave, I was so upset that I had to leave London, because I'd done the latter part of my growing up in London, so I classed London as my home. That was kind of my home, was London. But prison genuinely saved my life, even though I still have trauma from prison. It genuinely saved my life, and I am so grateful for it, because it gave me 10 months with my mother sober before she passed from COVID. So it gave me that quality time, and it gave me my life back, because I don't know if I'd still be alive if I hadn't have gone to prison. So it's been amazing for me to come back to Leeds. It's been absolutely phenomenal.
But also despite the fact, it must have been quite a challenge for your family to discover what you'd been up to in London.
Yeah, especially my mum, Dave. My mum had not known anything. It had just always been deny. She had a couple of times said about, are you on drugs? And I'm like, no, of course I'm not. I'm just working hard as a dancer. But I feel really, really bad, because my sister, who came to support me, she had to go back home. My mum knew nothing, that she didn't even know there was a court date. She knew nothing. And she had to come home and tell my mum that I was actually in prison. And she said that my mum kind of collapsed when she told her. So with that, I mean, I was very lucky, Dave, because my family was so supportive. And my mum came to visit me nearly pretty much not every month, because she had she had COPD, so she had health difficulties, but she came to see me so many times, and she would always say to me, I'm really proud of you.
Well, in that sense, you're a success. I mean, because in a sense, you left Leeds and became successful on the West End. I mean, that's not a trivial thing to do, is it? That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess it's that thing of, if I look at somebody's progression, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, you're doing so well. But when you're doing it yourself and you go through the process of the progression, I guess you don't see it how others see it, because you go through all the emotions, you go through the ups and the downs, and, the roundabouts, and yeah.
Yes, it's definitely more chaotic for you as the person who's driving the vehicle. And the last thing I want to talk about, do you still dance?
I do. I go to dance class once a week. I don't teach it. but I just participate for myself now.
I'm very interested because I've always thought we under celebrate, underuse dance as a therapy, and I just would be interested in your comments on that.
Oh, I think it's amazing. Like I said previously, I was teaching dance in the Sustained Recovery Hub at Five Ways to help promote mental health. It was like dance as therapy. I think it's amazing. It's a massive passion of mine, but it just enables you to escape life and your worries and your fears for whether it be an hour or an hour and a half of just pure unadulterated fun.
Yeah, and it keeps you fit as well. I mean, it is
100%.
Did you learn to dance at school?
Do you know, the funny thing is, I never danced until I left high school. But I remember saying to my mum when I was a kid, I remember pointing to some people on dance floor at the local working men's club and saying to my mum, why can't they move in time to the music? I was always able to move to rhythm. So when I was a kid, it really perplexed me, Dave, that people could not move to rhythm.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I'm in favour of reintroducing dance into schools. I enjoyed it in the 50s when I was in junior school, and it's so sad it's disappeared, and for all the very many positive reasons. Well, Darren, look, thank you for being on the programme. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being so honest, and congrats on coming out of a very challenging life and now giving a lot of help to other people. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Sorry, there was a bit of an echo then, Dave. No, but thank you so much. Like, I've had a really lovely time having a chat with you, and I know I am very chatty. So,
well, that's going to make you a good therapist. You can communicate, and we'll put up on the website the links and your QR codes, etc. if you give them to James. All right.
That is brilliant. I will send them over. And thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, we appreciate what you're doing too. And hopefully our paths will cross at some point, but it won't be on a dance floor at my age.
Well, you never know. I might be able to coax you on there.
You won't want to. Anyway, I don't want to threaten your success. Darren. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.